Morning, boys and girls. Welcome back to our book study talk on How Children Succeed by Paul Tough. Last week we talked about grit. Grit means don't quit, no matter what. Keep going, give it your best shot. To start today, I want to tell you a little bit about a story of a study that a guy did that's in here. And the basic idea of it is this. He gave a test to see how smart people were. And he found a pretty wide range of how smart and how not so smart people can be. But they really didn't have a reason to want to try hard. So he decided to give a test again, and this time he said, if you do well, I am going to give you M&Ms. So he found out that the kids who scored really low on this test, the second time did a lot better because they were going to get some M&Ms. Made our doctors here start thinking a little bit. So the coding speed test. This is the problem with trying to motivate people. No one really knows how to do it well. It is precisely why we have such a booming industry in inspirational posters and self-help books and motivational speakers. What motivates us is often hard to explain and hard to measure. Part of the complexity is that different personality types respond to different motivations. We know this because of a series of experiments undertaken in 2006 by Carmit Segal, then a postdoctoral student at Harvard, and now a professor in Zurich. That's over in Switzerland. Segal wanted to test how personality and incentives interacted, and she chose as her vehicle one of the easiest tests imaginable, an evaluation of basic clerical skills called the coding speed test, which you guys just took a few minutes ago. Segal located two giant pools of data. One included a whole bunch of students from the National Longitudinal Survey of Youth, or NLSE. I call it NLSE. The other part was a group of military recruits who took the coding exam as part of a range of tests they had to pass in order to be accepted into the military. So we've got these high-level students that are going to be going to college. Some of them are in high school, some of them are already in college, and we've got another group that is all going to go into the military. Now, these kids that are going to be in college, they don't have any real motivation to do well on the test. They just know they're helping out somebody in research. Meanwhile, these military students, they're trying to get into the military still. And if they don't do well on this test, they might not get in the military at all. If they do really well, they could get a better job within the military. So they had a lot of motivation. Now remember, the NLSE wasn't just a one-shot test. It tracked young people's progress after many, many years. So next, Segal went back to the NLSE data, looked at each cognitive score and coding speed test score in 1979, and then compared those two scores with the student's earnings 2 decades later, when the student was about 40 years old, like me. Predictably, the kids who did better on the cognitive skills tests were making more money. But so were the kids who did better on the super simple coding test. In fact, when Segal looked only at NLSE participants who didn't graduate from college, their coding test scores were every bit as reliable a predictor of their adult wages as their cognitive test scores. Let me give it to you this way. You got these NLSE kids. They took this cognitive test. If they did really well, and this is measuring how smart you are, if they did really well on this, later in life, they made a lot of money. Okay? If they did really well on this and did really poorly on the coding test, then later on in life, it was kind of questionable. Some did well, some didn't. But with these students, if they did not do well on the cognitive test, but they did do well on the coding test, they still made a lot of money later on. See, the basic idea here is that if they did well on the coding speed test, they made money later. The same could be true about these military students. The military students, the ones that did really well on the coding test, made it in the military and did really well here as well. However, if the military kids did not do well here, they either didn't get in the military or didn't do well once they got there. And why is this? Does the modern American labor market really put such a high value on being able to compare mindless lists of words and numbers? Of course not. In fact, Segal didn't believe that the students who did better on the coding test actually had better coding skills than the other students. They did better on the coding test for one simple reason. They tried harder. And what the labor market does value is the kind of internal motivation required to try hard on a test, even when there is no external reward for doing well. Without anyone realizing it, the coding test was measuring a critical non-cognitive skill that mattered a lot in the grown-up world. Let's take it back to those kids on the M&M test from earlier. They took a test to see how smart they were. They didn't do really well. But then they were offered M&Ms, and they did better. Why'd they do better? Was it because the M&Ms made them smarter? Of course not. It was simply that they tried harder because they thought they were going to get something out of it. You see, those students were low in whatever quality it is that makes a person try hard on an IQ test without any outside incentive. And what Segal's research shows is that that is a very valuable quality to possess. Trying hard, grit, doing your best even though you have no reason to do your best. You do it just because you want to. That's how you know you're going to have success later. Whether it's a test in a couple of months or it's making money 20 years down the road. Boys and girls, thank you for helping and walking through this with me. Hopefully you did well on your practice coding test, because then you'll know you're going to be successful later on too. How long was that?